and welcome to Ivy League. It's now cliche to ask if you can hear me. I would like that you say yes, you can hear me. So I just confirm that you can hear me.
I can
I
hear
can hear
you.
you.
Oh, perfect, perfect. So then that's fine. So we're live now. We're recording. So once again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ivy League. Welcome to our third series of the post-exam results relief and mentoring session. We started this exercise this year, just after the March 2021 exam. One of the things we found out was that it was important that we had conversations about the exams and how people might have felt or have fared also with the exams. It was important that we keep those conversations. For a lot of people, the experience they have when they write an exam, and especially with the results, can bring some sort of shock, and also to the response to the feeling of an exam result is also very important in looking at the consistency and also the determination to getting through this program. And one of the things we are finding out is that it's important that we do let students generally have a very broad understanding around the way the exams could be structured and what really to do if the exam doesn't turn out well. The learning points with this sort of conversations can even help people who are preparing for the exam know what to look out for and how to deal with it. The reality is that I've never seen um, for I can recall since ACC, I started writing ACC, or since I got affiliated with ACC, I'd never seen a diet where the pass rate for any paper was 100%, right? I've seen some very brilliant pass rates. So I've seen pass rates as high as 88% in certain papers, but I've never seen 100% pass rates. And what's the big picture? Oh, someone needs to be on mute. Sorry. So what's the big picture around that? The big picture is that it is almost practically impossible that anytime an ACCA result is released that you're going to have 100% success, right? But what is important really is the learning points, and we hope that when we have this sort of conversations, and this is the third in the series we've done, that those learning points are what we will take away from here, and perhaps that will spur those who haven't written or those who will be writing, that will spur them to success. And that's why we are doing this. So it's partly like a relief session, really to sort of look through what might have gone wrong, and more importantly, also to mentor us and also to guide us to keep the positivity around preparation, and also just to maintain the focus with the preparation. And that's really the broad picture around it. So once again, welcome to this. It's going to be like an open floor or an open mic session where we generally would just open up the floor to take comments, reactions, views. We've also invited the head of education and learning in ACC in Nigeria to join us in the call as well too. So I will check whether he's joined the call. If he hasn't joined the call, I'll also put a call through. He's also promised to join the call as well with us. So I'm hoping that that would also help as well at some point in the conversation. So if there are those who would like to directly hear from ACCA in some aspects of what they would like to provide feedback directly to them, he's going to be here. So I'm going to also get him to join shortly. But once again, welcome to the post-exam result relief and mentoring session. So let's be candid, let's be very frank, let's be very open. Where there are areas of concern, and it's going to be very interactive. Where there are areas of concern, please feel free to share them. If you've got reservations, feel free, to share them with us. Okay, so I titled some of the things we're going to cover today along the following themes. We'll look at the concept of why you would fill an ACCA paper, and I deduced certain reasons why people fill an ACCA exam paper, and I'm sure we'll largely agree with some of the reasons I'll share. Then the next thing I'll speak on is the power and the role of self-motivation. Very important, in this journey that you're self-motivated. I think that's one essential skill set that you must develop as you sign up for ACC. The ability to stay personally and self-driven and self-motivated. Then we could reflect on what do you think might have gone wrong, really just what do you think might have gone wrong. And then once we are done, so moving on, because we must move on, really. So what's next? What are some of the things you should do? I wanted to talk a bit about exam techniques because that's clearly something that is coming up a lot more. Focus on exam techniques, and then speak to how to intensify your revision plan. At Ivy League, we also have a lot of avenues to also help you intensify your own personal revision plan. And then lastly, I'll share quite some useful, relevant ACC documents, that can support anyone on this call. Then if you also have got other things to share, we'll be happy to take that on board. So welcome. My name is Jonathan, but I like to be called Jojo. So you could always refer to me as Jojo. I'm not alone on this call. In fact, I'm joined on the call with several of our expert tutors at Ivy League on the call. Maybe I should just even allow them introduce themselves. I think I can see some of them on the call. Um, I think Binio, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan. My name is Binuyo Adeumi. Uh, you welcome to our post-exam counseling session. Thank you very much. You will hear me after all the things have been said. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I can also see Tunde on the call. Tunde, do you want to just say a word? Just introduce yourself and
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Tunde Johnson, and welcome to this session. It's going to be very, very insightful. And please ask questions at the end when it's time. Thank you. Thank you, Jojo.
yeah. I've also got Habib on the call. Habib, do you want to just say a word to anyone?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here. Interested to help address questions, and I'm looking forward that you would benefit from it. Thank you.
Okay. Folakemi, do you want to say a word to us?
All right. Thank you, Jojo. Good evening, everyone. My name is Folakem Yoguyemi, and thank you for making our time to join this section today. Please feel free to ask questions and express yourselves. The tutor are here to answer any of your questions.
All right, fantastic. So, like I said, I'm not here alone. I've got about five of my other colleagues, and quite a lot more also going to join. Like we've said, it's an open floor session. Just feel free, air your views. I'm also going to get ACCA as well to join the call, the head of ACCA Education and Learning as well too. So you also get some on the ground insights, from you as students. Okay, now so the first thing is perhaps you've seen your results and you're unsuccessful, so meaning you failed your paper and the results came out on Monday as early as 12 a.m. I was already getting feedback and a lot of people reaching out to me as early as 12 a.m., right? Sharing their results, whether good or or bad with me. So what are the reasons why anyone might have failed the exam? Um, so this is the way I'll sort of put it, right? So there are those that are called marginal field, and let me start with them. So we define marginal field as from 45 to 49. Now, what we see and the evidence available to us suggests that A marginal field, which is anything from 45 to 49, really is down to exam techniques and not knowledge. And we say that because the difference between 49, 47, 45, and 50 hovers around 4 to 5 marks generally. So it could have just been something as little as time management. It could have been something as little as just paying attention to some of the professional marks if you're writing at the strategic professional level. It could have been something as simple as maybe using the right format or giving a conclusion when you're writing a report, or highlighting a calculation or pointing the examiner to a calculation, or maybe moving on stating a figure or adopting the own figures rule where you should have. There are quite a lot of reasons why the extra 4 to 5 marks that might have been needed to scale you through. It's always painful to actually see someone share their results with me and I see 49. I always think about every reason in the world why 49 could have been 50. Could it have been one more point that the candidate could have written? Could it have been, just perhaps, a little bit more efficiency around time? There could be several reasons. But these have been validated with numerous research that anyone within a score of 45 to 49 really could have been down to poor exam technique. Now, let me give you another insight. So I've been part of the ACCA marking process for a while, and the quality assurance that we build into ACCA marking is such that once the general marking has been done, then we have like a quality assurance. So there's a second reviewer before the third reviewer, who is the final marker. Now, the second review is largely for marginal fields, right? So anyone from 45 to 49 gets their script actually reviewed for a second time. Now, why I say this is that sometimes I have conversations with people where they say they want to call for an administrative review of their scripts. I would necessarily not be in a position to say don't make that call or make that call. But what I know that I can always share is scores from 45 to 49 gets a second review, right? And the reason for that is just to be sure. And you see, the reviews are really not like a remarking per se, but just generally to ensure that, okay, maybe could there have been numerical computations that were lost? Could it be an issue about, an omission or hello? Can you hear me now? The network tripped off a bit. Just a confirmation if anyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you
Okay.
now.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So like I was saying, and I can also say that with my experience, really, I mean, I've been around since 2008 when I wrote my first paper. I have also seen, even though the margins are or the percentages are quite very slim, but I've actually, seen, someone who's actually requested for an administrative review, and he actually turned out in his favor. So, but my comment really is marginal scores from 45 to 49 actually has had a second review, and that's part of the quality assurance that's been built into the ACCA marking process. Now, if your score was perhaps lower than that, right, and it could be anything, lower, maybe below 40s, the evidence does suggest that it was really down to a lack of knowledge. So my point is, we could look at it from those marginal scores that are down to exam techniques, and then the very low scores, which is really down to knowledge, right? And so that then suggests that if you fell into that sort of category, it's important that in preparing for the next sitting, that you sort of pay attention to areas where the knowledge or the technical knowledge across the paper might not have been very strong for you. And I generally even hold a view that each attempt, every ACCA exam attempt, should be approached as if it was the very first time. I really like a bit of humility with how you approach your exams. Never make assumptions, and if you need to go through even areas where you feel you're quite strong, you are never wrong if you have a second look at those areas again, right? So if your score was low, then it does suggest that it could have been down to lack of knowledge. Now, if it's anything, between the region of 40 to 45, I would think that it's a combination of exam technique and maybe some aspects down to knowledge. But the point is that there are three basic reasons why people would have failed an ACC exam. Three basic reasons why people would have failed an ACC exam. Exam techniques, one, and that can apply to marginal fail. Lack of knowledge or sufficient knowledge about the paper, and that can apply to very weak scores, right? I hold a view of 39 and below, right, for that. And then a mixture of the two, and I hold a view of within 40 to 44. But that is just a general broad view about how I look at it, right? And but it can be debatable if 44 means lack of knowledge or exam techniques. But the point is, those are largely the three reasons why you might fail: exam techniques, lack of sufficient knowledge around the paper, or a combination of the two. So that's generally the view. So it's important that that helps you as you now prepare for another sitting. And that's the reason for that analysis I just gave, so that you sort of think about the things you need to focus on. I would share my views with you on exam techniques. I'm going to speak to that in a subsequent slide. Please, as I go through, feel free to, raise your hand. You want to ask questions, we are tracking that. And also for my expert tutors, my colleagues on the call, if there's a point you want to make at any point, please feel free to interject. It's an open floor conversation we're having here. Okay, so having looked at broad reasons why people tend to fail an ACC exam, but something that has to be shared with everyone on the call and is also consistent with everything I've said when we started, is that self-motivation and your personal desire to succeed in your ACC exam still holds the key to doing well. When we look at the trend with people who tend to have what I would say, quote unquote, a very smooth ride, with their performance in the ACC exams, aside conversations on knowledge, conversations on preparing with the exam technique, is really that personal drive, and desire. And I think so. There are lots of reasons why, you must still sort of dig in deep sometimes, and retain self-motivation. In a world such as ours now, where there are lots of distraction, staying focused might be a challenge, you're dealing with. There's work pressure, there can be demands on the personal side or even on your social side. It's important that, you retain the motivation, for wanting to succeed and earn your ACCA membership degree. One of the first things I would say, and I think that's a very important conversation today, is nobody really cares how many times you wrote your ACCA exam at the end of the day. So nobody would ever say to Jonathan, how many times did you write APM? How many times did you write AFM? How many times did you write PM? On a personal note, I wasn't always successful with all my papers on the first sitting, right? And I can share that story much later, in the call, So I had some papers where I wrote not even once, not even twice, but thrice, right? So, and I've actually had students who I taught, and who actually got it right the very first time. And I've actually had cases of, in fact, I've been teaching APM since 2013. And one of the very best scores that I've seen a student of mine, right, score, and that was 82, was a student who wrote APM the third time and got 82. And that was quite a very remarkable score, right? So even though I'd seen people, write it once and pass once, I didn't see a score of that magnitude. And that's quite significant for a paper like that. So it still boils down to the conversation. Nobody really cares, right? And nobody will really care how many times you've written any of your exams. So the most important thing is congratulations, for every time you're successful with your paper, and eventually when you become an ACC affiliate and you progress and migrate, to becoming an ACC member, that's where all the return on investment, begins to come in. So nobody really cares, and nobody should care. So don't feel, don't put yourself under that pressure. I failed this 3 times, I failed this 4 times. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day, right? So nobody is watching you, nobody's auditing you, nobody is, just, keeping tabs at the end of the day. Oh, you wrote this 4 times, you wrote this 5 times. So just have that at the back of your mind. And to also help with self-motivation, I would like that you think about all the reasons in the world, right, why you chose to sign up for ACC. There's several reasons, right? It's always interesting sometimes, I speak to someone, right? We have a story of David at Ivy League. David, who finished secondary school at the age of 17 and signed up, to write ACC with us. And by 19, not just was he done with ACC, but he also had a master's, coupled with the BXc in Oxford Brookes University. And those kind of reasons can appeal to different people on why they might want to sign up for ACC. In one of my classes, there's someone who speaks to me and the voice is so young. So one day I had to say, send me a personal chat. I want to ask you something. And I asked, so what are you doing? And he said to me he was waiting for school. I didn't understand what waiting for school meant. He said to me he was done with secondary school and he was waiting to get admission, to the university that he's been trying for JAM for about 2 years now. And, trying to get an admission to school hasn't been it for him. And that's why he's doing ACC. And mind you, this is a strategic professional class, right? And I got curious. So how old are you? And he said to me he was 19, right? So I'm saying that is one reason, right? And regardless of whatever conversation we have in the class, such a person is saying to himself, I'm in this particular qualification because I want to use this as a route to obtaining a BSc degree. I want to use this as a route to obtaining a master's degree, right? So think of the many reasons why you chose to sign up for ACC. Let that constantly drive you as you prepare for your exam. For some people, it might be international opportunities. It's very common, right? I had a case of a student that was last year who actually resigned from a big four. He was working with a big four and he wanted to make a move. He was getting married to his fiancée and they already concluded that they wanted to relocate and stay in the UK. He actually resigned, right? He resigned and he was always at Ivy League. This was 2019. He was always at Ivy League, every night. He had a reading team. And they were all reading together. It was always at Ivy League every night. They were reading. And it was 3 papers. So he threw everything, even through his career, locally here, put everything he had, put his career even, at stake, and ultimately, it paid off for him and he was successful. And today, as I speak, he's in the UK right now and, just being grateful for all the sacrifices he made and he paid for himself, while studying. So think of the many reasons why you want to, you want the ACCA qualification. Let that always constantly drive you. I find that also helps a lot, and pulls through, each time you meet a brick wall, such as failing, or not being successful whenever your results, comes up. And let me be very clear, there are endless opportunities associated with ACCA. There are endless opportunities. ACCA just launched recently a career navigation portal, right? And it addresses a broad range of opportunities from a career perspective for anyone in finance and business, right? For those of us who want to go into entrepreneurship, there's a whole range of dedicated resource and even charting career pathways, right? Do you want to run a small, medium practice? Do you want to be like a virtual CFO providing advisory and CFO sort of consultancy services to a broad range of organizations? Or for those who want to take different career paths, you want to be an assurance advocate, or you want to be a risk management professional, or you want to be a pure financial reporting expert, or you want to go into other broad aspects of finance like sustainability, other new emerging areas, or you want to be a digital finance expert as well too. So there's a whole range of valuable study materials for free, by the way. Once you signed up to ACCA, you can access all that. So the opportunities are endless, and ACCA has been deliberate about refining our route to achieving those endless opportunities, right? So I think accounting is the career for now, the present, and the future. And with ACCA, it's one route to achieving all of these opportunities. All of these opportunities. And just to say, let that also constantly drive you and fuel the motivation, as you prepare for this exam. Also, to serve as some self-motivation, it's a global qualification, right? So one of the things I constantly find every day, even on my LinkedIn page, is I'm getting a lot of invitations, I'm getting a lot of requests for friendship. And the only reason is because I've got an ACCA beside my name, right? Either they want us to partner on something, or they want me to support a cause, and they feel the easiest way to get a partner is to look out for someone who shares common values, common set of ethical codes, as we do promote with ACCA. So it opens up that global opportunity, and it's a global qualification. We are in over 165 countries and counting, right? So that means that potentially, if you are going into a new country or a new market, your ACCA qualification might be one route to getting familiarized in that location, and also get yourself assimilated, right? Recently, I've been having a conversation with someone, and the person is based in China, and then somehow we're able to locate something to do with the ACCA office in China, and then we're also having those sort of interactions, right? So ACCA is the global qualification that gives you a global network. That's really the point. And also to motivate you, currently the vice someone is smiling. Is that okay? Currently, the vice president of the ACCA is a Nigerian. So I think that's also something that can spur everyone on the call. The vice president of ACCA is in Nigeria, and in terms of how the progression does work, so that's perhaps the next ACCA president. So in a couple of years, the next ACCA president is going to be a Nigerian, right? Who several years, just like most of us on the call, sat down somewhere in Lagos studying for his ACCA exam, and today, or in a couple of years, will be the president of the ACCA. So that's really one thing that can also get you motivated. So such global opportunities can be presented to anyone. Even as we speak today, on the ACCA's Global Council, we've got 4 Nigerians, right? And even as we speak now, 2 Nigerians are currently even contesting again, right? So it's not going to be impossible to imagine that we might have 6 Nigerians on the ACCA Global Council. And guess what? That could also be you in another couple of years' time, right? So it's always important that you think about all these global opportunities, as you prepare for your ACCA exams. Another thing that might also make you very motivated is exams hold every 13 weeks, right? And that's something that I think should also count for motivation. What do I mean, right? So every 13 weeks, there's a chance again to write. And even to think about it, it's 7 weeks actually after your result comes out. So when you write your exam, in 6 weeks' time, the results are out. Then in the next 7 weeks, you have a chance to write again. So even that time period, right, between when you see your results to attempting another exam is so short. And so it gives you a quicker healing process, if you understand what I mean, right? So it's a shorter time to sort of, get by, immediately. Some people reached out to me as early as 12:05, 12:10. In fact, I had calls. They wanted to talk to me, right? And said to me, Jojo, I didn't make it this time. And I said, you know what? You're going to make it in 7 weeks' time. And you know what? Since you have that bothered about the results now, I want you to do something. Go back to bed, and when you wake up, you get back studying. Sign up for lectures if you want to sign up for revision lectures with us. And in 7 weeks' time, let's change the narrative, right? So that's another good thing with the ACC qualification, that once the results are out in 7 weeks time, if you're not successful, you have another chance to give it another shot again. So in 7 weeks time, for a lot of us, which perhaps the week of December 6th to December 11, you can write the exams again, right? And there's an ample list of study support resources that I'm going to highlight that can help you deal and get by your next exam. So the summary of all this conversation I've had is self-motivation is very, very key to succeeding in your ACC exams. And there are lots of reasons why. So, do I have any comments or questions at this point? I want to be sure that this is not a monologue. I'm having a conversation with quite a lot of people. So if there's anyone, and also my colleague tutors as well too. Yeah, I think I see a hand. Miriam, yeah, please feel free. Yeah, go on.
Yes, thank you, Jojo, for making out time to facilitate this mentoring section. So actually, you sensed my mind to say you actually don't think it's going to be a monologue. I was a kind of, if you want it to be interactive, then you've said so much that so that those of us that are wounded, like I'm wounded, could actually speak up and then get healing. So I took advanced audit and assurance. As a matter of fact, this is my the third time. So when the result came out, I was like devastated. So I was in the category of marginal failure, but failure, whether it's marginal or actual failure, is failure. So the bottom line is that I failed. So now, and with your explanation, I've gotten to know that I lack the exam techniques, and I actually agree with that analysis that my weak point is lacking exam technique. And I was a kind of like convinced that if it could have been paper-based, I should have passed, because I know I struggled from one window from the question window through to the answer script window in order to write. So I wasted a lot of time trying to juggle between the question and also to write the answer. So that time, quality time wasted in that aspect. And I'm beginning to think if actually it's ripe for the electronic, for the online exam, if African setting is actually ripe, if it's ripe now for ACCA to bring electronic exam to Africa. But it's like I'm convinced that it has come to stay. So the technique that I will appreciate is to help someone like me, who originally thought that I am a computer literate, to have the exam skill, in the sense that if I get into the exam, I should be able to maneuver, navigate between the exam, the question paper, and then where I will write my answer response. So I try copying questions into where I will respond to the answers, but I was not able to do that. I tried to copy, I was not able to copy. But before the exam, I thought I could, that there is this literature I read that you can copy and then into a space where you're responding so that you can, it's easy to navigate, to look at the question again, keep an eye on the questions while responding to those questions. So that is I think that's my major challenge now. So now the exam is very expensive anyway. So someone like me, I'm paying my way through, the organization is not funding. So I pay my way through. So it's painful to fail the first time, the second time, and the third time. And then the fourth time now, nothing is now certain. I'm even scared of the exam. Okay, thank you. I think I will rest here and then get some healing messages.
Miriam, let me first start by saying sorry about the experience with the last exam and also the couple of exams we've had. And to be honest, that's why we're having this, right? Really, because we know we feel we have a duty to counsel, our students, and also reassure you that even where it might look like the confidence might be disappearing, but just to say to you that we are with you. So what I'll do is let me directly, since you mentioned AAA, there are a couple of AAA tutors on the call. Let me allow them speak to you. I know I've got someone like Olumide. Olumide is our course leader for AA here at Ivy League, but he's also a member of the AAA faculty. There's also Tunde Johnson as well on the call. Earlier on, I saw our course leader for AA on the call, Shea, as well, but I don't know if it's still here. But let me let the course leaders and or the course faculties for those papers, speak directly to you. I'm sure they heard you. Olumide, do you want to speak to her?
I want to try to see if I can. Okay, so Miriam, I got your feedback and I also tried to reflect on the fact that you've also thought about it and you kind of have an understanding of what is currently not working quite well for you at this moment. And I think that's a good start point into knowing what to do next. So what I would naturally do if I were in your shoes would be to attempt, because you've identified, I think, the issue to be more of you responding electronically as you believe you would perform better in a situation where it's going to be paper-based. So what I would naturally do is to use the CB platform to kind of practice a lot of the past questions. So if I use the CB platform, it would, if you've not started doing that, it will help you familiarize with that environment. And what that would also help you do is once you use the platform, and once you also put yourself in exam condition, for example, you could say, you know what, I want to attempt this year's 2017 or 2018 AA question. And I'm going to time frame myself to, if the exam is for 3 hours, I'm going to put stricter time to say, you know what, 2:45, 2 hours, 45 minutes, let's see how that works out. So once you do that, you try to maybe assess yourself, or you might talk to one of the tutors and say, you know what, I've done this in this condition. If you can create some time, can you just see how I have performed? Then the objective of that would be that the tutor will now assess you to see, you know what, are you actually answering the questions in the right, with the right approach or correctly? Maybe the issue is not even the platform. Maybe the issue is more the understanding of the question and possibly how you're responding to that. Because sometimes we feel that we are attempting the questions properly, But when someone independent looks at the way we've written it down, the person might feel differently. Like, okay, I think you should write it better. So maybe you should be aiming for 80 or 90 marks, and you would, if it doesn't work out that way, it will still be far off from maybe the marginal approach. Yeah, so I kind of feel you should maybe take a step in that direction and see how it works out. So I think that's the bit I would say, and I'll give other people to make recommendation.
Okay, I know I still have a couple of AAA tutors on the call. Who wants to go next?
Hello, Jonathan. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you.
All right. I understand the issue that was raised, but I don't want us to be distracted. You can't take each candidate scenario case by case when you still have presentation. So I think you should finish your session and then we'll move to the Q&A because not everybody here is writing AAA, for example. So Miriam will come back to those details and those broader themes around preparation and all of that. That's my suggestion.
Okay, and that's fine. So what will happen is I'll speed up the presentation so that we open up the floor. And just to confirm, Victor, are you on the call? I did say that we invited the head of learning and education, ACC in Nigeria. Victor, are you on the call? Okay. He did send me a chat.
Yeah,
He was joining.
Victor he joined a few minutes ago. I'm surprised he's not.
Okay.
I think he's.
Okay.
Don't worry, I'll reach out to him.
Okay, that's fine. So let me just wrap up. So what's next in terms of, I mean, what do we suggest? So I think you should register for the next exam. Um, what you would also do is really make sure you've identified the areas of weakness, and a lot of our conversation today would help you, pay attention to your areas of weakness, right? Maybe across the technical content of the syllabus, or if it's broadly around techniques, and then make sure you have a solid revision plan, right? At the heart of the revision plan can be joining revision lectures at Ivy League, but even beyond joining revision at Ivy League, it's a commitment as well to practicing and ensuring that you revise, on quite a lot of topics that you've learned, you've taught, you've read on. I wanted to speak on exam techniques a bit, and one of the things I wanted to say is, so this is the way my view around exam techniques in terms of expectations on the examiner. So there are three levels in the ACCA syllabus. The first one is the applied knowledge, and at that level is really around knowledge, and even the way the questions are tested. So and the papers where this is applicable to business and technology, management accounting, financial accounting, and then corporate and business law. With the way the questions are even worded and asked, it reflects really direct knowledge. So what is, a lot of the questions will be around what is, define this, just to be sure that the knowledge is there. As you then move up to the intermediate level, which is the applied skill, then it's now beyond knowledge. You then have to now start getting to your application of the knowledge, right? So demonstrating application, demonstrating the understanding of the concept and the knowledge that has been shared. As we move on to the third level, which is the final stage, which is the strategic professional, the questions are now as to how you apply this knowledge to specific scenarios, specific organizations that will be tested, demonstrating a good application of that knowledge. And that is where it is, right? So for a lot of the papers at the strategic professional level, there's always a sort of ratio around like 70-30, right? 70 meaning for application, 30% for knowledge. In fact, one of the papers, which is the strategic business leader exam, SBL, right, is wholly 100% applied. There are never questions at SBL like what is, or questions that ask you around something knowledge, or trying to validate knowledge. It's really around application of concept, application of knowledge to a particular case or organization that we tested. So just to help candidates as we prepare that let the focus be on your ability to apply all the knowledge you've been taught, to the questions, to the scenarios, right? And giving scenario-based response, right? It's also something that does work, right? There'll be other details. Someone needs to be on mute. Sorry, check yourself. There'll be other details around that. I also think that there are some easy marks as well too, and this might speak to the strategic professional papers. So we've got the professional marks, right? So for example, the use of the right format does help. The use of the right format does help. Even things around, the way you communicate, professional writing, citations, for your reports, to, from, subject, dates, having an introduction which requires you're paraphrasing the question requirements, clearly spacing your points out, even though this is now being improved on with the CB platform, and then ending with a conclusion where you are required to, right? So these are some easy marks I feel that, candidates should be able to grab, right? Now, even across both the skill papers and the strategic professional paper for the calculative bits, there's a concept we call OFR, right? The own figure rule, which is, you'll be penalized once when you get the wrong computation, but subsequently, any application of the figures you get, if you got the wrong computation, right, you'll be penalized just once, but a subsequent application in the question of that particular figure, would not be penalized again. And that's where the concept of using your own figure rather than the right figure that should have been derived in the question is. So I think that this is something I find, someone might say to me, I spent over 40 minutes trying to conclude an EVA computation. That's for APM. EVA means economic value added, right? And I'll be like, when you get stuck sometimes, right, you can, make assumptions about a figure, you lose a mark, at that point, and then move on, right? So rather than spending all the time, because that is something you will never have in abundance on the exam day, time management. Another thing that has come up, and that was reflected in the points Miriam made, was around the CBE platform. So there are other groups I belong to, and a point has been made about the CBE platform. There are some counter arguments, So I mean, Miriam was speaking and said she wonders if this is the right time, to introduce CBE in this part of the world, right? There are also arguments people have put up in other groups I belong to that even CBE has made things quite easy, right? Because there's some formulas that come in handy with a spreadsheet, right? That you can easily do. You can do a drag and drop. You can easily impute certain formulas, and your calculations can be a lot more faster if you use the CBE platform. Even things around formatting, right? So you can copy from your PDF question, on the CBE platform down to the word processor templates or platform. So there are quite some benefits that people have said from a time management perspective that it can actually be faster, right? If your typing speed is actually at the required levels, that you might find out that the CBE is actually better for you than paper-based. But the reality is, in today's workplace, right, you don't find people preparing reports or doing computations, with paper and pen and biro. And because ACCA, as our mantra, thinking ahead, right, we always try to reflect our exam scenarios of what the work conditions, in today's world environment is, and that's, so it has come to stay. And we were in Africa actually the last set of adopters of the CBE platform. So it started in 2020. The earlier set of CBE exams were in March 2020 in quite more matured markets like in Europe, and they had started the CBE exams, right? And there were quite a lot of support videos that, ACCA introduced, and even here at Ivy League, we shared those videos, we signposted students to watching those videos. We even did some webinars around the CBE platform. Even ACCA locally here in Nigeria also ran a lot of webinars. I even participated in those webinars, just promoting the use of the CBE platform. Aside the fact that the on-demand webinars are also available on the website, but all these were there. But I mean, you've got to be able to master that. Now we know that this is the way exams will be tested, so we must, add it as part of our exam technique that we can master, the use of this CB platform. One of the expert tutors, Olumide, did say, start practicing your questions on this CB platform, right? That would help you prepare, because this is the reality and we just have to live with it. Time management is one of those old principles that are timeless, right? And it has always held even when we wrote exams years ago, and it will still hold even for the future set of people who write this exam. You only have the allotted time available to you. One of the things I keep hearing every time is your inability to manage time. It is subjective if the time is enough. One of the things I know from my knowledge with ACCA is that before a question is being set, part of the quality assurance is that they get an actual team to simulate the question, and attempt the question under exam time condition and come up with a very decent score. So one of the feedback that I can share with you around ACCA's examining process is that any question set can be attempted and completed within the required allotted time. So if it's a 4 hours exam, there was perhaps a quality assurance where some candidates actually sat for those exams, tested for those exams, and had a very decent scores, right? So the time is what it is. It's one of those things we just have to deal with. What we should rather focus on is how to make the most, out of every time. One of the things we teach at Ivy League is, make sure that you are disciplined on time. And once the time you've allocated to a question is up, please, be professional to move on to the next question. The ability to wanting to get the particular question right might later be your own doing, when you look at the overall scheme of things in terms of what your final score might be. So it's always best that you actually stay very disciplined on time. And this can come from a lot of question practice. Another exam technique across every paper really is to show your workings or state your assumptions. It's one of those things that can help you, especially with competitive papers. State assumptions, all the assumptions you employ in your workings. The examiner can only tell, right, how much you are trying to do, with the assumptions you've stated. Show your workings. Every calculation, no matter how simple it is, would earn you some sort of marks at some point, right? At lower levels, I've seen calculations earn 1 mark. As strategic professionals, I've seen some calculations that earn you, a simple calculation that can earn you 0.5 marks, right? And the sum total of all these workings can add up to 4 or 5. And we've had conversations today about people having 46, 47. Perhaps, some of these detailed workings might have been could have been very crucial for you. Okay, so finally, I'm wrapping up now so that we can go into the Q&A and open floor. Is that there are quite a lot of learning resources. I just want to highlight them because even I, as a tutor, right, I keep signing up, right? And one of the things that ACCA does is that for we as tutors, they also make these resources available to us. So for every resource I'm sharing here, I actually have profiles to them as a tutor. And if I am doing that as a tutor, I think that I actually recommend all this as well too for you as students, right? So there's one called In Session, right? So In Session is a dedicated sort of email series you get, for the particular paper that you signed up for, right? So this is being sent every Tuesday up to your exam, right? So once you sign up and pay, you start getting that. It comes in every Tuesday. It's called In Session. So you get for any paper you're writing, you get to receive this. There's the student virtual learning support, right? And this is a great tool for self-check quizzes. Great revision tool, helps you with, ensuring that the underlying knowledge is there. Say for papers like papers with these variants, like Tax UK, and I think one other paper again that has a variant. All other papers you would find on the student virtual learning support. Very great tool for building your knowledge and understanding of concepts. There's the learning community as well. The learning community is open to students. You can explore different sort of materials. There are study groups contained there. You chat with fellow students. Sometimes expert tutors like us can, be consulted to come in to give our views. I think that's something you can sign up for. There's the study hub. The study hub as at now, but I know that from next year is going to include the applied skills level, is limited to the strategic professional paper. So this is like free content, free study materials, right? So for anyone doing the strategic professional paper, the study hub is there. The site is studymaterials.accglobal.com. Your ACCA user ID and password takes you directly there. You can get lots of practice questions, detailed knowledge, pass cards, just to help you, right? So it's structured along the lines of your syllabus area, more like subsidizing. This one investment ACC has made to subsidize your overall cost of the exam by providing you with free study materials. The CB platform, which has been mentioned, is also one that ACC has invested in, right? So anyone who is registered can actually access a live replica of the platform. And this is the site, cbpt.accglobal.com. One of the things we even do as a tuition center is also to also create students as well too on our own version of the platform. The difference between the platform you can access directly on this site and our site is just the extra capabilities to create our own questions as a school. But regardless of whether it's the one as a school we offer or this base one, ACC has made this investment for everyone. So if there's anyone who will be writing the exam for the very first time, I don't think you help yourself if you've never visited this platform, to attempt a question, just a live replica of what you find on that day. And then I think there's also the support resource. This is infinite in what it contains. Here you find the technical articles, here you find past exam questions, here you would find study tips, you find examiner approach documents, read the mind of the marker exam documents, a lot of abundant resources you would find for any ACCA qualification. So finally, I'd say, consider taking tuition. I think it's something that I want to recommend. It's not a good strategy to make all these investments and not take tuition. So take tuition with an approved learning partner. I would recommend Ivy League. We're platinum rated and we've been so since 2017, right? So which is the highest you can ever find, anywhere. So I would recommend you take lectures with an approved learning center. Have your own study plan as well too. It's important. It's a combination of what you get, from lectures and your own personal commitment, to wanting to succeed at these exams, right? You can also obtain an approved content provider. Some of the exam bank questions, it's in abundance. You can find them, and if you also need help, we can also help you match you in terms of purchasing one. The syllabus and the study guide is also one that I recommend that you also have a view, look at it also before your exam, just to look at broadly around the syllabus. Okay, yeah, so finally, review the last 4 examiners' reports. There's a document for every exam called examiner approach document. It tells you what the examiner is looking out for, how they structure the exam, what are the key considerations, how the syllabus ties in together. I think you should go for that. Every paper too has a short video. In fact, at Ivy League, we've also done a short paper introduction video on our YouTube page. You can go and access it for free on our YouTube page. Just go to YouTube, check for Ivy League Associates, and you would see a paper introduction video, right? So you would also find something similar on ACC's website as well too. Introduction video, how to approach the paper. Technical articles is one of those things I recommend a lot, especially the articles from the examining team. Those are direct insights that the examiner is providing for candidates. So I think you should. And then finally, this will always work. Attempt couple of questions, more questions under exam condition. We would share at Ivy League and say attempt lots of questions and give out more questions. Towards the exam, as we will start with our revision, we now say in Ivy League, attempt these questions under exam time condition. And I say this from experience because I've seen a lot of people who've solved questions. I always tell them, as we move towards the exam, it's now about attempting those questions under time conditions. So for example, SBL is a 4 hours paper. It's never a great strategy for anyone to tell me they've solved questions and nobody tells me you haven't solved this question under 4 hours. The same thing for other papers that are 3 hours and 15 minutes. Attempt these questions under 3 hours and 15 minutes. That's exactly what you be faced with, on exam day. So this is, the much I'll share. Many thanks for your time listening to me. At this point, I think we're going to open up the floor. There might be some views from some of the expert tutors on the call. Let me also confirm again if the head of education in Nigeria is on the call. Victor, sir, are you on the call, sir?
At your service, sir.
Oh yes, yes, that's my boss speaking. Okay, many thanks. There are quite a lot of insights some of the students have raised. I thought it would be nice if you also listen directly to them and where you want to also profile or your counseling or share your thoughts, it would be nice. So yeah, so that's it for me. I want to allow some of my colleague tutors also give comments as we now open up the floor. So I know there are quite a lot of them on the call. So who wants to sort of give general views or make general comments? Habib, I thought you were going to say something. Okay, okay, go on, go on. Somebody's speaking. Go on, please go on.
Yeah, why don't we open the floor for questions so
Okay,
that students can
we
also
manage time.
have enough time to
Okay.
deliberate. And most of the discussions will be macro, right? What someone raises something on a paper, I think the response will most likely also still apply, or at least a part of the response will
Okay.
still apply to the other papers. So please, if you've got
Okay.
questions, you can just indicate by raising your.
Okay. So here it's open floor. So let me just do the moderation. So if you've got questions, you could just signify, raise your hand, and the floor is yours. Everyone is listening. So please feel free.
Okay, hello, good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for the motivational speech, obviously, and the encouragement. Sorry. So obviously, everyone here is not happy about their results, but specifically, I wanted to ask something that's more advisory. So I took two papers in September, and both of which I scored within the 40 to 45 range. So, in terms of redoing those exams, would you recommend doing both in December, seeing as like because I know a lot of factors go into it, but seeing as it's within that not so marginal, but where it is either knowledge or technique space, which might require a bit more work, like in addition to practice and reading and all that. So would you recommend I do both again in December or just do one?
So I think she can just take the response to these things so that we get his views, largely. So he's taught a lot of us on the call as well as tutors too. So let's allow him, speak to that.
Well, we are all contributing. Thank you, KJ. In fact, I was checking that at the time I thought you were speaking from Jonathan's house until I saw that uh, you had raised your hand. Okay, so I guess there's no one size fits all answer to that question. So it's not the kind of question where I would say, just do it again, everything. So obviously, questions like what did you score? What was the reason? And what's your plan for, from now till December? Those are key questions that I will ask if I was doing a one-on-one with you before I give any recommendation. So if your score is marginal, I think Jonathan displayed the various bands earlier on. So if your score is marginal, if you could pinpoint that, okay, these I think are the reasons. Some noise coming. Okay, so if I think these are the reasons why, I didn't pass the paper, um, or and say for example, maybe it's due to time management, and you are able to say that I should be able to have enough time over the next 6-7 weeks to prepare for the paper. Then yeah, all that points to, take it again. It's probably even better to take it again than taking a fresh paper. But if I ask you and then I'm getting a score that is, far from the passing score, and um, you we really find it difficult to narrow down the reasons for not passing the paper. Maybe, for example, it could have been due to preparation that was not detailed enough. Maybe you've not covered the syllabus adequately and things like that. And you don't envisage that you will be able to have some time off to study, or maybe you envisage a very busy 6 weeks. Then, that will point to reducing it to one, or, some other plans. So at the end of the day, it's very difficult to say, oh, go for it or don't go for it. You have to consider those factors, particularly the second one. Why did what could have been the reasons, why I didn't pass this paper? And yeah, and if you can identify that, interestingly, I mean, it shouldn't be a problem trying it again. So those are my thoughts on KG's question, Jonathan.
Okay, thanks for that. I mean, and I saw you didn't try to be definite on should she wanted clear specific response on if she should go in for that. But I understood. I mean, you might have needed more information about what she did to be able to make that choice for her. But I think on the average, what I'll say to her is you're always better off, where the residual knowledge is still fresh, right? There's never any assurance that in 6 months' time, some of the conditions that made you quite prepared for the exam might still hold. But are there evidence that people have spaced the exam and still come back good? Yes, they are. But on the average, I think that once you fail a paper, you're always better off because of the presence of residual knowledge. You're always better off, just taking it the next time. And so, if you wanted clear, specific guidance, I would always recommend go the next time. But if the question, to some extent, tends to speak around was two papers at the same sitting too much for you, that cannot be a decision as to what your workload and commitment looks like. So you see where there are some aspects of your question that you really have to be the one to make the call. Preparing for two, did that take a lot from you in terms of how you devoted your time to the preparation? But I think the presence of residual knowledge would always help you. Just writing immediately after the results are out, that's my take. Is that fine? Does that help you?
Yes, thank you. That's quite helpful.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So more questions if you want to share with us thoughts, and don't forget ACC is on the call listening as well too. It's important that I added that.
All right, Joe, if I could just refer back to what
Miriam.
I think it was Miriam, raised the other time, who spoke passionately about her results, and it happened to be my paper. Although I'm not sure whether she took lectures with us or maybe joined the revision and all of that. She raised a particularly important point, which is the the computer-based exams, and navigating from one window to the other. Maybe, for example, you had to use spreadsheets at some point and then move back to the word processor, or maybe you even use the word processor throughout. But obviously, you have to pull through lots of exhibits, based on how the questions are arranged. I sometimes even feel that, if ACC had just made the question a straightforward PDF document that you can just scroll up and down. And when you're on page 2, you know you're on page 2. You don't have to shut another window and open another window. I know it's just your word processor and your PDF document. Maybe could have made, navigating a bit easier. The honest truth is there's nothing you can do about, all of that. And as you know, the workplace now, there's hardly anything you do writing on paper. So the whole essence of doing this is really to mimic what happens in real life. Someone has argued that in real life I use a laptop and my keyboard is likely to be softer. I don't have to start dragging a mouse up and down. Well, it depends on what you use. But I know people have complained to me as well about, the so what word do I use now? Let me just say the entire infrastructure and the structure around that and how it might have affected their speed in the exam. Or I think Olumide answered that already. Practice makes perfect. That's what I would say. I would say get used to that platform. It's just a function of getting used to it. Get used to maybe even doing your mock exams on a desktop computer, because desktop, I for one, for example, will not find desktop as easy as it will be if I'm using a compared to using a laptop. So you just have to, as much as possible, mimic that exam scenario. If you would ask my own view, I think moving to a computer-based exam makes time management better. But it's obvious that everybody does not share that same view, particularly some candidates. So, but I think you can improve your dexterity, your proficiency in that area by, getting on with it well before the exam. There's something we've done in our class for AAA, for example, and I think for AFM as well, which is to say, okay, over the last 12 diets, how do we ensure that we solve all the questions? So for my paper, for example, I've said 12 diets. There will be 2 diets that you will do as your own self-assessed mock. There will be 1 diet that will be the final mock for Ivy League, which you will get a feedback from the tutor. And there will be questions we will solve during the 6 weeks revision, which is starting this weekend. And there will be questions that have been identified that you have to do on your own. And probably the few other ones we have are the ones we've already done in class. So we have divided all the questions for the past 12 diets that way. So our belief is that, or my assessment is that if students, do the self-assessed mock on their own, mark it on their own, use the marking scheme of ACCA, see how those marks are allocated. Then you do the Ivy League mock, you get the feedback from the tutor, see what you need to improve on. You attend the mock debrief sessions that we're going to have, because there's no point attending mock debrief session if you didn't do the mock. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. Then the questions you have to practice on your own, you do it as well. As Jonathan said earlier, you do it under timed conditions and all of that. Then you will increase your chances of passing. The truth is, all the optional papers are difficult. They are difficult. The pass rate at least shows that, even if you don't want to believe what I'm saying. And as I often say, the pass rate also shows those who are even reading the paper, over and over, that have experienced the paper. So it's quite tough when 3.5 or 4 students out of 10 are passing a paper, diet on diet. So you really need to put in some hard work, to make this happen, and ask the right questions during revision, get ahead of the tutor so that you can ask the right questions. And so I typically say sometimes we have to learn like a baby, that way you read when you were probably starting off your first professional exam or maybe in university, and all of that. It may not be easy to do that, but sometimes that's what this thing really demands, because a lot of things may actually be competing for your time. So it's tough, but it's something you can get through if you do those things. So if you're doing self-assessed mock, do it on the platform. Don't start writing on paper again, because that does not reflect reality. Mark it yourself, do the Ivy League one and all those things. I believe those techniques will help. But the question is, how many students really subject themselves to 3 mock exams before their exams? How many people wants to face that rigor, and all of that? So I think that's just my point to the point raised by Mary.
Okay, brilliantly said, and I mean we all agree with your view. But Victor wants to speak. Victor Ayola, who is the head of education at ACC Nigeria. Victor, before you speak, I just want to give you a feedback. I've gotten that privately from quite some people, which is around the infrastructure at the exam centers. I don't know how much that is being escalated to you in your end as the coordinator for that, but um, people have called me to say things like the mouse wasn't working on that day, and the impact sometimes of that thing can unsettle someone. Already the exam is pressure on its own. To get to the exam, mouse is not working, and I got this for SBL. I'm not making a case for our poor performance, but I got this. I called SBL student who didn't make it, and it wasn't one person who was saying this to me, that there were issues with the mouse at the particular center they were in at that day. So I just felt I wanted to highlight this to you, and in your response, some of them are on the call, and it would be nice that you speak to this. Thank you, sir. Victor, you can go on, sir.
Okay, what's happening? It looks like
I think because he told me he was on his way from Babcock, so maybe the network has. He joined, his hand was up when you were speaking. He wanted to come in, but he's off the call. So I think manager will just call him. Let's take more comments. He will respond to this soon. Okay, so any views, any more question again? I want to.
okay. So 10 minutes. Joe, looks like there's no question, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So can I say something, please? And this cuts across multiple papers, and that's because of a pattern, I also see in recent times, and perhaps that talks to the issue of how much time do I have to prepare. So what I want to talk on now is question practice. What does it mean to practice a question, right? Obviously, we all know that preparing for an exam, there are 3 phases. So there's the study phase or the learning phase, there's the practice phase, there's the revision phase. Now, across all these 3 phases, one way or the other, you will have to practice, even if it's a small example or exam standard questions, as you move closer to the exam. Now, when we say practice, uh, uh, the practice I see sometimes is not exactly what it means to practice a question, if you get what I mean. So practicing a question should also cut across 3 phases. Phase 1 is you solve the question, and I use the word solve, whether it's discursive paper or computational, you solve the question, right? Then number 2 is you mark. And then number 3 is you debrief, right? So you have to go through those 3 phases, no matter how fast and simple it is, but it has to cut across those 3. Please feel free to stop me, Jonathan, if Victor is around, okay? So that we can take his session.
He's around. He's around.
Sorry,
Okay.
my internet is playing up and down. I had to go outside the house to to continue at a time.
Okay, so Victor, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, what
before you did you hear me?
No, I didn't. I only rejoined when Sheyi was rounding up.
Okay. I wanted to bring up the issue with infrastructure at the CB centers. That it's something that's been said, right? So maybe the mouse is not working or the system is a bit slow. The infrastructure. So I know that we outsource the CB exams to a third party. I think British Council in this climb. I don't know what is happening in terms of how we are having the conversations with them on a commitment to ensuring that the infrastructures in any way shouldn't stand in the way of a candidate's exam on that day. So we've had conversations and feedback around the miles and things like that. So I don't know if this is being brought to your attention, and do you want to say anything? Some of them are on the call, and those are some of the views you're expressing.
Okay, I missed some of them, but the one I heard was from Maria, who was talking about CBE, to which Sheyi and yourself have very accurately responded to. But on the other ones, I did not hear, but I did a survey at the end of the exam. And through that survey, I was able to get a feel of what was happening in each exam center. Let me first, if anybody has had a problem with infrastructure in a particular center, let me first apologize on behalf of ACCA. We try all our best to make sure that you don't have that kind of experience. And part of it, just as Jonathan mentioned, not only do we test the question papers with real human beings before it comes out, the exam centers, they run demo even before the exam day, and not once, not twice. And when something silly happens on the exam day, it's really very, very painful. We know how destabilizing that can be. But having said that, in terms of infrastructure, you mentioned mouse, you mentioned keyboard. Now, if you have a dodgy mouse, a dodgy keyboard, or you have anything that is happening at the center that could potentially affect you, one thing that I encourage students to do very, very quickly is the moment you first notice the problem, please raise your hand, get the invigilator to solve it, and let them pause your exam so that you continue without losing your time. As I said during many trainings that we have read, don't try to be a troubleshooter. Now, when the problem is something that cannot be easily, and what they will normally be expected to do is to move it to another system. And that's why when you have a hall that has a capacity for 50, you will actually have only about 40 students sitting an exam. The other 5 to 10 computers are meant to move people to an emergency in case something goes wrong. And that may be a faster way of continuing your exam. But I've also known about cases like we had in JKK, where there are very noisy keyboards. I want you to know that I have complained about this. The British Council is aware and ACCA is aware. And it's something that has been escalated. That center is on the watch list. Now, the question will be for many students, they will say, okay, are we going to abolish the center? I would love us to be able to say, yes, we will abolish the center, but that does not necessarily candidly solve all the problems. First, because we don't know the capacity that we have until you have finished your exam bookings. And that is why we open the exam centers one at a time. And sometimes after we have filled all the available capacity, we are constrained to only pick a center that we are already familiar with. We know from experience that sometimes problems are from centers that are new. And sometimes it's because of issues that cannot be anticipated, which they get better at. And we try to make sure that that doesn't impact your exam. But please, if it impacts your exam, make sure that you register your complaint in the exam center on that day. Keep calm, do your exam to the best of your ability, but immediately you finish your exam, insist to the supervisor that you want to write down your complaint. It builds a case for you and empowers you when you want to file in the mitigation. Now, the deadline for mitigation is usually the Monday after exam. When the last exam is Friday, mitigation normally ends by Monday. And there is also something that is called exam withdrawal. Now, exam withdrawal is where something fundamental has happened in the exam center, and so much that you could not continue your exam. I have personally advised two students, for example, that was in 10A, 10A about 2 days ago. I personally advised the last two students there to 11, and we are still having issues. And I personally advised them, please tell the supervisor you don't want to continue with this exam. Cancel this exam. And my logic is you will be better off canceling the exam. You pass through so much stress that unless you are an excellent student, the chances of your failing are there. And so please, I don't want it to be sentimental. When you get into a situation that is so difficult and your paper is going to many hours, I want you to know you have a right there to say you don't want to continue with that exam. If it says yes for, nobody's going to force you. The second thing is that immediately after the exam, you can withdraw the exam. Now, you cannot withdraw the exam when your results are out, because that's like you are using medicine after death. But immediately after the exam, if something has happened in the exam or that has really, really impacted you and is a serious issue that is caused by the center, you can withdraw your exam, and the SSA will refund your money, and they will do everything to make sure that you don't suffer. I don't know whether that has fully answered your question. About technical issues, we cannot 100% avoid them. Even in the UK, in advanced countries, they happen. It's unfortunately, even in the workplace, it happens. And this is a reflection of what happens in the workplace. But we try through testing, through quality assurance to minimize them. In the whole of Africa, for example, this last exam, there was only one student that could not get a result because even though the student finished the exam, but there was a technical issue that prevented us from seeing the exam. And they took the position that instead of giving this student an incomplete mark that will make him to fail, let us cancel the exam from our end and inform the student. And that is the kind of extent to which we try to use to be fair to the student. So please, if you have issues, number one, make sure you report it. Number two, let me know. If I know, I will know what to do about it. I will know who to talk to. But please, don't just be silent about it. That's just all I will advise. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Victor, for that. But just so that the message was clear and loud, the process of withdrawing after your exam, so that the right message is understood. I guess there's a complaint form that has to be filled and is established, so that it's not a case of if someone feels I didn't do well, you think anyone can just
No, you
withdraw.
cannot. No, there must have been something serious that happened. In fact, you can, let's say, for example, you fall sick on the day of the exam. Now, what many Nigerian students will do is to physically go to the exam and write. That is the wrong thing. You fall sick on the exam is a serious illness. It's a serious illness. Now, preventable things, if you are going to deliver a baby, even by operation, you have already been told 2 weeks before by your doctor, it's not an emergency. So you cannot withdraw your exam. But if you fall ill on the day, let's say you have COVID on the day of the exam, SSA does not want you to come and spread COVID in the exam. You can withdraw your exam on that kind of conditions. You understand? So it's not a case of I didn't do well in the exam. No, if you have taken the exam, a lot of time you have actually forfeited your right to withdraw. But if there is something that is fundamental that you can that can impact you and that is fair and known, you can withdraw your exam on that day. If you suddenly fall ill on the exam day, with your medical certificates, you can withdraw your exam.
Okay, that was brilliantly said. Um, does anybody have any question? Since we've got ACC on the call, you can directly ask him now. If not, we'll wrap up and call it a day. Do we have any question, any comment?
Yes, I have a question. I'm here again, Miriam.
Okay.
Thank you so much to ACCA representative. There is one of my questions that is not attended to, and that is the ability to copy the questions into the one's platform so that the moving from one window to the other can be minimized. So is there any special skill I need to do that, or is it that the platform, the CBA, is not enabled for questions to be copied from the question to the answer script?
Okay. Thank you, Miriam. I don't know how to give you a straightforward answer on this. I've heard about this 1, 2, 3 times from students, but it is actually not, unfortunately, it is not the experience of generality of students. For most students, it is possible to copy your question from the question into the work area. In fact, when I'm delivering the session on strategy professional, I usually recommend that you copy from your what is it called again? From your exhibits. You copy from your exhibits the requirements into the question so that you'll be able to follow through your question. I have heard about 1 to 3 students who had this issue before, but please, when you have an issue like that, I think it is good to escalate it. It is good to escalate it. But what can you do in the exam condition so that one minor issue doesn't be a decider of what is happening to you in your exam? Instead of copying the question, another thing you can do, for example, is this question. This question is maybe I know it may take a little bit of time, but this is in paragraph 4, for example. But you are not able to copy it. You can, if I were you, I mean, I'm not speaking for ACCA now, but if I were in that situation, and I know that this exam is time bound, what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably type in capital letter, question cannot be copied in based on paragraph 4. So information. You understand? Anything practical that we move you on and maximize your time, because I'm not saying it's minor, it's not minor, but if there's a workaround that I can quickly do inside the exam hall to avoid it and then not allow that to determine the fate of my exam, that would be my focus. But another thing that you can do so that we can be sure what the real issue is please, if you have not attempted or joined one of our sessions before, we've already had 20 sessions on the strategic professional CBE. I will strongly encourage you that once we start rolling out the ones for December diet, please make sure you attend very early. I know there's a temptation for many students. I'm not talking to you now. For many students to attend towards the end, but when you attend a session 2 weeks to the exam, to be honest, it doesn't show seriousness. You are supposed to have had 6 weeks question-based revision as a minimum, 4 to 6 weeks as a minimum. And if you are just learning how to even use the platform 2 weeks, it's not going to be helpful. So please, I encourage you from the day one, from the first question, from the first assignment in the class, begin to use the platform. You are not going to use notes in the exam, or there's no reason trying it at all. Just do it there, screenshot it, or save it as PDF so that you can refer to it later. And that will be the way to go. But please, if you can refer that question to me again, we can escalate to the exam operations team to say that we have had this report. And with your ACCA ID, it's late now, but with your ACCA ID, maybe somebody may be able to run a demo on it. Maybe somebody may be able to run a demo on what happened during your exam. I don't know, but I will try. Again, as I said, this is one coming from one of many hundreds of thousands of exams. So I don't know whether the team will be able to do that at this particular time. But if I've raised it as an escalation earlier, I'm sure somebody would have investigated it as part of your mitigation.
Okay, all right. I will do you an email and then let me see how ACCA responds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
Please, I have a question, please.
Okay, there's a hand by you. Who has the question? What's the name? So I just do to you as the next
My
person.
name is John.
Okay. So John, hold on. Let's be fair to Bayo. Bayo's hand has been up. So after Bayo, then we'll come to you, John.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so I wrote a paper in September, and I scored 49. And I was told that at least 3 or 4 people would have marked that paper, and none of them could find where they could give an additional mark. Okay, so in my case, I was sick like about a week before exam, but I got well. Should I have, on that ground, it was actually COVID, should I have on that ground tried to withdraw the pay? Because throughout the period I was sick, I couldn't prepare, I couldn't really do much, so should I have tried to withdraw the exam on the ground that I was sick just about a week before exam? And another thing is that paper has now kind of destabilized my plans, because I'm due to write 2 papers in December, and there's no way I can squeeze in that one paper, because 49 is very, very marginal. The residual knowledge is still very fresh, but there's no how I can squeeze in that paper, because I have to write those 2 papers together, since I've been preparing for the 2 of them together. So I right now I'm like in a confused state. How do I go about that? Do I just take this paper in March? Because I'm not really sure I'm able to squeeze it in to write a 3rd paper in December.
Okay, John, can I interrupt you and ask at this point?
Sorry, what did you say?
Okay.
So can I interrupt you and answer at this point to your 2 questions? If Jonathan permits me.
Please feel free, sir. Please feel free. Go on.
So let me answer the second question first, and then you will remind me of the first question. The second question is, should you interrupt and do the question where you score 49? My thinking is, you see, this is not about speed. It is about finishing well. And experience has told us that if you rush yourself, you will actually finish slower and more expensive than if you take only what you can cope with at a time. Now, only you know your circumstances. Based on what you have told me, you are not able to cope with 3 papers at a time. It is now your decision to say, I can only cope with 2 papers, let me drop one. I know it may be associated with other costs, like you have already paid for tuition, but I don't want you to put yourself under unnecessary pressure, because it will be counterproductive. It is possible people are taking 4 exams and passing all 4, and people are taking 3 and passing. But I also think that many of these things do not reflect very well on our environment. In many of these countries where that may be the norm for people to take 3 papers, they don't have 6 hours traffic. They don't have 4 hours traffic. And you need to now condition yourself, in my opinion, to the time that you have available and be realistic. Secondly, you took exam in in September, and you want to take another 2 in December. I think it's a good thing, and I won't condemn it. But the reality is that these exams are not designed to be taken over 6 weeks. From the date that the result comes out to the date of your exam is 6 weeks. Remember, it's still the same exam standard, the same tough exam that people used to prepare for 6 months. So trying to attempt it in 6 weeks, which many students that are here are going to be attempting, in my opinion, is putting yourself, is minimizing your chances of success. And what I would rather that you do is that you plan well ahead of time, you space yourself, and you give sufficient time. There is a reason why the tuition mode in Ivy League and in most approved learning partners is about 4 months for an exam. If it is 4 months, you can't squeeze it suddenly into 6 weeks. That is called an intensive. So I want you to please consider that. Now, the first question on whether you should have withdrawn from the exam. If you are seriously sick on the day of the exam and you have something like COVID, you could inform ACCA, and of course, it will come with a medical report or a negative, a positive test with COVID, and you would have been excused on that day. But you see, I'm careful to know that everybody gets exam anxiety, and somebody can develop COVID 2 days to the exam, and as a result, decide that they don't want to take the exam. This will not cover that situation at all. I don't know whether I am lost or whether somebody is still hearing me, because I just said a dangerous sound now that my internet may be down. Sorry, please, can you confirm whether you are still hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, so that's all I have to say. So this facility, if you have COVID on the day of the exam and you have your medical test to prove it, ACCA will excuse you. But it's not something to say I was sick last week, as a result I don't feel like writing the exam. Unfortunately, ACCA has also paid for the exam, has paid for your system, has paid for the seat that you are sitting on, has paid for the hall, has paid for Korea, has paid for person view to deliver it, has paid for British Council. All these are contracts that have been sealed on your behalf on the day of the standard entry closes. So it's very difficult for us to move those things unless in very serious situations. I hope you understand. That's it from me, please.
Okay.
Please, while I'm waiting for
fine.
the next question, I put myself on mute just for a second.
Not a problem. I think John, then we can wrap up. John.
Okay.
You wanted.
Good evening.
Go on.
Good evening. Okay, so my own question is, what is ACCA doing about the noise in the exam hall? Because in June, it was as if we are using typewriter. And the noise was just too much. Can we get like a laptop? Thank you.
Okay, sorry. If you are referring to JKK, I mentioned earlier that I have already escalated that to British Council and to ACCA, and we are working.
No, it's not JKK.
In fact, which center is that? Is that 10A?
No, I used the center at Anthony. Is that? I don't know if that's JKK.
That's Workforce. The
no,
center
it's
at
not
Anthony.
Workforce. Opposite
the
police station. Yes.
Okay, that is Test Place.
Yes, Test Place.
Okay. I will take it up again. I know that to be a particular issue with JKK, and I've already raised it about noisy typewriters. I will take that up again. I cannot make any immediate assurance, but one thing I can assure you is that ACCA takes your feedback very serious, and we work on it. We work on it.
Okay. Many thanks, Mr. Victor, for your insights. It's I think it's about time. I don't think we have any more question, but let me just allow tutors give their closeout remarks, their signing off remarks, for as many as I can find on the call. Olumide, do you want to just give us your parting shot? Okay. Um, what of you, Binu? Do you want to give us your parting shot?
Okay. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Uh, I'm very grateful to Mr. Ayola for all he has said tonight. I'm really looking forward to steps being taken to address that, because I always get that. I got that report almost every time. But let's go away from that. I think from what Mr. Sheyi said and from what I know, I can say that good preparation still counts in passing these exams. So no matter how tough it is, you still find out that some students still pass. And the difference between the passing and the failure is down to preparation. So those things like question practice. So several times I've got to talk to so many students about question practice, that you don't just run away from question or just because you've marked yourself. You still need to understand why you've failed or why your answer is wrong. Many students don't pay attention to that. But Mr. Sheye has spoken much about that, and I wouldn't want to rehash what he has said. But what I want to say is about applied skill papers. Papers like PM, papers like tax, papers like FM. You need a good objective question practice. Many don't understand that. Many practice only section C type of questions, ignore, whether deliberately, whether ignorantly, objective question practice. That is the cause of failure of several students at that level. And quite unfortunate that this September exam, you still see people saying that. And for my friends who are writing strategic professional papers, those are difficult exams. Let's not lie to ourselves. I want you to take note of what Mr. Ayola said. Personally, I've said that several times, that there is no, don't put yourself under any pressure of finishing the exam at a particular point in time. Good preparation is key. So trying to do this exam 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I don't think is the best. So thank you very much. That will be my parting shot. Over to you, Jonathan. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we have two Olumides. Olumide Akinwade, do you want to give us your parting shots?
Yeah. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Go on.
Yeah, I'm actually in a bus. I don't know if the background noise is okay for people.
It's
I
fine,
think it
but
is okay. It's
yeah,
fine.
you can go on.
Okay, I can continue. All right. Okay. Yeah, just a little thing to add to what everyone has said. Yeah, one, you need no one can do this part for one. You need to encourage yourself. You need to believe that uh, failure is not the end. It's just an opportunity to reattempt and do much better. And on the issue of practice, it cannot be overemphasized. You need to practice using the CBE platform and solving questions, marking and debriefing as already, earlier advised. So once you key into all these things, I believe you will do better. So because of our time, I won't want to say much. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Habib, do you want to wrap it up for us today?
Thanks, Jonathan, for having me, and thanks to all the speakers and students who have asked questions. I think for me, what the way I look at things is I will encourage students who have had challenges to be easy on themselves. It's okay to have, it's part of life, right? To have one or two challenges along the journey. It's for you to become better. So don't be too hard on yourself. Take it as an opportunity for you to learn, to become stronger for future challenges that you will overcome. So just be compassionate with yourself. I think that's the word I will use. That's okay. It's part of the journey.